Hi, welcome to Her Legal Lenz. I'm Amber Cohen,
And I'm Kelly Sanders.
and we're the trial attorneys, and we love to watch trials. We're going to talk today about day 9, which is Kouri Richins' trial, which March 5th, and it probably was one of the most uncomfortable days for Kouri because jury heard straight from the people who know her best, her friends. And so we start off with, Marie Bramwell.
So before we get into Corey's friends, the prosecution starts off by putting up Marie Bramwell, who's a divorce attorney in the area that Corey consulted with back in 2021. And they had a meeting, and the prosecution really used her to really as a springboard to put in Corey's statements to impeach her and show that she's lied.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the divorce consultation for Corey, to me, actually, I think, yes, I get the impeachment part of it, but also, if the divorce was being explored, why would murder be necessary?
Well, when we listen to the calls that they introduced during this witness testimony, it's a jail call from Corey where she knows the call is being recorded and she's speaking with Cody, Eric's business partner and close friend. And she's saying to him that she doesn't care about the money. All she wants is the house. She told this divorce lawyer she didn't want anything. I think they're trying to show that she was doing that intentionally because she knew that call was being recorded.
Okay. So you think that she did that intentionally?
That's why I think they were putting it up there, and then it contradicts with getting because the state's whole theory, right, is that she stood to get more money with him dead from these life insurance policies than if they divorced because the prenup would be in effect.
Okay. I mean, to me, I know that the attorney looked very uncomfortable. She didn't really say much. She's like,
Oh yeah.
get me off this stand. So she didn't say much. I think that was, probably like you said, just enough to impeach her, impeach Corey.
I don't think any attorney would be comfortable having to go and testify about conversations you've had with the client. I think that inherently makes us uncomfortable, right? Where it's ingrained and trained within us that we have confidentiality with our clients. So you always feel like if you have to and you're put in that situation, you're walking such a fine line. So of course, I'm not surprised that the attorney just looked really uncomfortable.
Yeah, except for the fact that Corey could waive privilege for her defense, right? She could have waived it to say, you know what, tell them everything I said. Tell them everything I said. Tell them that all I wanted to know was what would happen if we got divorced and, whatever, 50-50 custody. I wouldn't get the prenup and tell them that I said I don't care about the prenup. Tell them I only said, you know what I mean? Those kinds of things. So she could have
Yeah.
done that. She didn't do that. So
And there may be a reason why she didn't do that. Maybe she doesn't want the jury to hear what she really told the lawyer.
but remember that, the privilege is with Corey, and so she absolutely could have waived it. So I do think that that is interesting.
What I don't know though is if a juror would pick up on that, right? Is a juror really going to pick up on, well, we could have, is really probably not going to understand the nuance that, well, Corey could have said that it's okay if the lawyer said what they talked about and she didn't. So I don't know if that piece will land on a lay juror, but it definitely was something I picked up on.
Yeah. All right. And then, so who's next after that?
Well, that's where we get the first friend of the day with Becky Lloyd,
Mm.
the friend and CNE employee that Corey helped get the job. And really, she's put up there for, I think, a singular purpose, right? She's put up there to say that in December of 2021, the two of them were wrapping gifts for the needy children, and they were talking about the state of Corey's marriage. And Corey said, I'd be better if Eric was dead.
Right. And they got her in and out on that.
Well, except I think when the prosecution first put that in, it sounded awful, right? But then the defense, I think, scored a little bit of a point on cross-examination because the witness denied telling an investigator that or a detective that if she were asked to say that at trial, that she wasn't really confident that she would be able to swear that that's what Corey said. She denied saying that, and then the defense actually played the tape, and the juror got to hear her own words and her own voice saying to this investigator that she really couldn't say with confidence that Corey actually said that. but then was able to get up on the stand and testify that she did.
Yeah, but the problem by making her look bad, the prosecution got to go back and make her double down. And what she said was it was so early on in the investigation that she wasn't sure. She didn't want, in essence, it sounded like she didn't want to get Kouri in trouble. But so she's like, it was an out for her. And it appeared to me, I don't know, that she seemed a little bit believable that, yeah, I did say that, but I know she said this. So she
But the
doubled
defense
down.
Well, the defense also got to sprinkle in what they've really been trying to sprinkle in throughout the case, how much influence and involvement Eric's family had on this. And so what came out during the testimony is that during Becky's testimony is that the first time she spoke to investigators, right, she didn't tell them about this. It's not until after she meets with Eric's sisters that then she directs her to go to the police with this information. So it was just another the defense taking an opportunity to just kind of sprinkle that and put that seed, plant that seed in the jurors' minds that these witnesses are coming forward with this testimony after they're speaking with the sisters who we at this stage in the trial know are really out to, to prove that Kouri did this.
I think Becky, though, wasn't she introduced as more of a friend of Eric's or
I thought that she was a friend of Kouri's who helped her get the job at CNE Masonry, and then the families kind of, I think, became friendly
throughout the
because I think they
time
had,
that she was
yeah,
there?
I think they all had kids, and I think they became more and more friends.
And they did get out that they stopped paying Kouri pretty quickly thereafter once Eric died.
Yes, absolutely. They made sure to get that out.
They did make sure to get that out. Okay. So Becky, and then we have oh man, Mr. Morin from the diner, Mr. Gabe Morin.
The breakfast sandwich guy.
Mm-hmm.
What sometimes I think gets lost in this trial is that on top of the murder trial, the prosecution is also trying to prove an attempted murder, right? The prosecution has this theory that Kouri tried the first time to kill Eric on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2022, so a few weeks before he ultimately passed away. And so this was the prosecution trying to prove that Kouri is the one that bought the sandwich that Eric ate that made him sick later that day.
Yeah, so they make him go through the order, right? They have the Greek omelet, the bacon, egg, and cheese, and then mayo with a fried egg, pepper jack. He goes through the whole thing. He's giving his detailed like restaurant. I'm like, ooh, I'm listening. I'm like, sounds delicious. Like, I kind of want that. And they add into the evidence, obviously, the receipt. Kouri is spelt wrong. It is spelled, Corey. Someone takes the phone order, but so they have Kouri phonetically, but obviously spelled incorrectly, but they match it up. So that is their order. And interestingly, I'm not sure why, but Attorney Nestor, maybe you have some insight, but Attorney Nestor asks about the temperature of the sandwich. Did you catch that?
I mean, maybe they're trying to say that the sandwich just sat out for a while and it was food poisoning, and there was something in there trying to plant in the jury's mind that maybe he ate an egg that's, fried egg that sat out too long, and maybe it was food poisoning, or that was the only thing I could think that they would try to introduce that piece of it. And I think that ultimately, I think that's why they introduced the ingredients.
Right.
It
Well,
may
they
have seemed
well they talked about the
simple.
eggs and how hard the eggs were, whether it's runny or not. So salmonella, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, I'm thinking like, okay, you got a runny egg. Maybe you eat a bad runny egg and you get food poisoning or you get salmonella or something. Although if a juror knows salmonella, you'd be sick for a lot longer than a day. But I think that that's why they ultimately had him list the ingredients. I think it maybe seemed silly, but they had to put out what was in the sandwich for a juror to think something in there could have made him sick.
could have been something else. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he has a cheese allergy or something. I don't know. I think did you already say the February, that was the Valentine's Day breakfast, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Um, he was a likable witness, pretty easy up and down. So
In the
then,
diner, just comes in, gives the facts.
yep. And then we get on to Josh Kays. I'm sorry, he's the friend of Eric.
Yes, he's one of Eric's close friends. They played rec sports together. They seem pretty friendly. And again, he's introduced related to the February 14th incident, introduced to talk about a phone call he gets from Eric. He's not allowed, the judge makes it clear that he's not allowed to testify about what Eric said, because that would be hearsay. So they're not allowed to bring in his statements, but he's allowed to say what he told Eric in response. So I think the jury can kind of read in between the lines about what they were
Pick up.
talking about. And basically, he says that Eric called him that day, said that he was able to testify about his demeanor, that he was more somber than he's ever seen him before. He's really normally generally an upbeat, likable guy, high energy, and he was really somber that day.
And I think also too, Kelly, at the end, I think they ask him, have you ever seen Josh use any kind of drugs, any kind of, prescription drugs, illicit drugs? So they also use him to basically say he's never seen him use a drug.
That
Um,
too.
yeah. So that is a way, to sort of validate and continue to sort of solidify. There's no way that Eric took this drug intentionally. All right. I don't even actually, I think on Josh too, they did not cross-examine him.
I don't think they did, and if they did, it was very short
Yeah. So
and
the
not memorable.
defense really had nothing else to ask him. And so for that, I mean, there was really no weaving of anything. Um, okay,
Then we get into the heart of the day.
yeah, this is the major witness of the day, Chelsea Barney.
Oh, that poor soul.
I know my heart actually really broke for her. So do you want to outline what Chelsea said? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
lot. So just,
there's a lot in there. So I'll kind of just a overview here, and then there's certainly more to dig into with some of the text messages that came in. But Chelsea Barney is one of Kouri Richins' best friends, and ultimately, Kouri convinces her that so Chelsea Barney is working in I believe they were saying a waitress or a bartender of some sort where she's receiving tips. She's married. She has three kids at this time, maybe one on the way. By the time this is all happening, she has her fourth baby. And her and her husband take their entire life savings and believe Kouri when she's this, media or excuse me, realtor mogul who's taken over the real estate market. She's going to get them a house, and they make a deal where Chelsea's going to put her life savings of $45,000 down on this house as a down payment on the house. And she goes and she signs a deed, and she ultimately wouldn't be on the mortgage. She'd own the house, but Kouri owned the mortgage, which was a little bit unique. So it's a seller financed mortgage. And so Chelsea's going to put $45,000 on this house. She's then going to sign the deed. She's going to own the house, and she's going to pay the mortgage $2,900 a month. What poor Chelsea doesn't know is that Kouri never records the deed. So she's never the owner on record of the house. Ultimately, to fund her other real estate projects, and then eventually uses that house as collateral for another $95,000 mortgage. And Chelsea then learns on the day of Kouri's arrest, because she's arrested leaving the closing for this property. And ultimately, Chelsea and her family lose their house and get evicted by the later owners of the house. So best friend got duped out of $45,000, and her family lost their house. I mean, that's really the heart of her testimony, but they certainly get a lot more in.
So Chelsea, what was notable is that they were friends for over 20 years. I think that she said they met in junior high. And she was honestly the girl in Kouri's corner. Like if Kouri could have just not screwed over her own best friend, we would have seen a really different side. And, I will say that it was palpable how upset and obviously, devastated Chelsea was. I mean, she got teary. She could not make eye contact with Kouri. She was kind of like looking, around. And it
Anywhere
was,
but Kouri.
yeah, and it was, obviously really that piece of it, if you believe Chelsea, which why would we not believe Chelsea on that, is horrible and devastating. But again, it's to impeach her, right? It's to show that she's not a truthful person, that even though the jury is not supposed to be taking that into consideration in the sense of, because I think we see the text messages and we hear the phone calls. Oh, we didn't talk about the phone calls. So
Yeah, we got there's still a lot more of
I
her
know there
testimony.
was so much. It's so
So
much to
much. And
unpack.
most of her testimony wasn't even her testifying. It was her sitting there awkwardly as they're going through all of their text messages and then playing the call. She's really just up there for a long time, just kind of like you said, trying to look anywhere but at Kouri during while
Yes.
all this is happening.
Yeah. So the text messages are between Corey and Chelsea, and they are obviously surrounding the investigation of Eric's death. There's a lot of back and forth, and you can really see that Chelsea is advocating and a real, support for Corey. And I think that, you know, Chelsea believes her throughout
Absolutely.
that process. So if you're on Chelsea, or if you, excuse me, if you're on the prosecution side, you are really starting to now see, Corey as just not even just a murderer, but now she's really this really horrible person who's just, committed all these other major crimes. And the, but if you're on the defense side, you may be thinking, okay, she's a horrible friend. She stole from her and she's a financial thief. However, this doesn't really make me think that she's killed Eric intentionally.
I agree. And on top of the fact that the prosecution gets to use this testimony to show just how diabolical of a liar she is, and she'll lie to her best friends, it doesn't matter. I mean, she'll pretty much rob or I use the word rob because ultimately she steals that $45,000 in a house from Chelsea, but she'll take it from wherever she'll take that money from wherever she can get it. But the ultimate, I think the legal reason why this comes in at the trial is for the motive to show just how financially desperate she was that she was even willing to steal and lie to her best friend in order to continue to finance her sham real estate business that she had going on so that she wouldn't lose everything.
Yeah, and the phone calls, interestingly, she ends up, once they are starting to, once it's acknowledged that the house is not Corey's, that it's the trust's, and the sister has, the sisters, Eric's sisters, have told her that the trust is going to own this house. Corey makes these phone calls to Bryce, and Bryce is Eric's best friend. They are lifelong friends. They've known each other. It seems like the families are close. And the girls sort of set up these calls to call Bryce to get him to say, you know, basically to support Corey, right, as evidence to
Right.
support
Well, because
Corey.
remember, Kouri, this is another call that Kouri is recording, right? So the call we heard earlier with Cody, she knew was being recorded, and she is recording this call. And keep in mind, it shouldn't be, I'm hoping it's not lost on the jurors either. But this is what 2 days after Eric's death. This call is really, really close in time to his death. I think all of this happens like the next. I think actually ironically enough, on March 5th. So it was like a year to the day of when this,
Of this
excuse me,
day
the
of trial.
anniversary of when this trial was happening or when this testimony is coming out. Um, but I also I have I sometimes I was taking a step back when I was listening to that because I also have to remember that Kouri is a woman in this scenario with children who just lost her husband, who within 48 hours of losing her husband is being told, and I'm sure in if you assume that for the sake that she is not the one who murdered him, that she's being told that the house that her and her kids live in doesn't belong to her anymore. And even if people are telling you like, oh, we're not going to make you move, it's just a trustee, you're going to hear that other people are involved in your house and have control over it. And, it's not surprising that if she is innocent, that she had an absolute meltdown over learning this information.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just take a step back and look at her, what's happened, if you um have lost your husband, you've been told, like, so let's just presume for a minute she didn't murder him, right? You've lost your husband, you've lost your house, you've lost, everything is sort of being taken from under you. And what we find out is a little bit more family history in the next witness that I think gives a lot, in my opinion, context to what's going on with her thought process. All right. So we're not there yet, but we learn in the next witness that she's lost her home as a child. We learn that her family was devastated by loss. And so, that sort of traumatic response is, in my opinion, gives some context to it. It made sense to me after we saw the next witness why she would be reacting the way she's reacting. With that said, if you are on the prosecution side and you're hearing that, then I'm saying, okay, look, it's just all about the house, right? It doesn't really give a shit, excuse my language, about the husband, Eric. She just wants the house. She keeps saying, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the money. But, the reality is that she is obviously upset because she thinks she's getting the house. And clearly, if you believe there was a financial motive, then that would be significant. But
And
um,
I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the defense argued in opening that their theory, part of their theory was going to be that that she would never have killed him over this reason because she already knew about the house being in the trust. I think that's what they argued in opening. But all of these witnesses and these phone calls and these email or these text messages where she's so shocked about this, the call with Bryce, these emails about the trust and the incident that we hear about with the next witness in the safe, those all directly contradict this idea that she knew about the transfer of the house to the trust. So if they're really going to argue that, I think that they may want to reconsider that in closing because I just think the evidence to the contrary is really overwhelmingly not that's not the case.
Well, I wonder first of all, if Bryce knew he was being recorded. I'm very curious to know. I don't think we know if he's being recorded. I mean, I don't know if they're going to bring him in. Maybe not, but it certainly doesn't appear that they're like, oh, by the way, we're recording this call. I mean, they don't put him on notice of that. So that's one thing that's
Well,
interesting to
don't we
me.
learn later in the next witness that they're all drinking and Bryce ends up like losing his pants at some time in this night and
Yeah.
it gets a little wild. So I'm not even sure if everybody's completely sober during this call either.
Well, I don't know. Is the call, I think is the call after the that night, right? It's
Oh, I thought the call was, I didn't think it was really a call. I thought she was recording them while they're talking at the wake incident or
no,
what
because he
I
has
tried
to
to call it the wake.
because at some point he has to leave. Says, I have to call you back. I'm getting off.
Oh, okay. So
So
maybe I'm,
there was a break at some point. But Bryce is really trying to tell her, Kouri loved you. Kouri loves those kids. He wanted you to be taken care of. And those trust documents came and were signed over a couple of years ago. And she's like, I know, and we've done so much since then. We're together and we're strong. But I mean, it's not lost on me that the day before we've just heard from Mr. Grossman and we've had really, intense emotional testimony from him where they were going to be meeting on Friday because they were going to celebrate the house. So I do have some, you know, question as to how that fell on the jury
yeah.
because, obviously they get to decide what's important, what's not important. But if she's sitting there saying to Bryce, we were so much better and here we are, and, th that wasn't me, Bryce, that we're stronger, and then, but really these text messages come out that says, I'll meet you Friday. I want to celebrate with you and I'm so excited
Yeah.
and with
So is
the
it possible that because listening to that call with Bryce, Kouri really thinks she's a successful real estate businesswoman. Like she's absolutely convinced that if you were just listening to that, you would have no idea, right? You'd think she took $250,000, flipped all these houses, and now they own $11 million of property. I can't tell if she actually really believes that. Have to think that she knows that it's a lie. I mean, she has a master's degree. I would think that she's smart enough, but man, is she sound convincing when she's saying that, right? Like, unless you were actually digging into her banking records, it was all totally believable.
well just to fast forward, I mean, if we want to go into the next witness and then we can talk a little bit, but Allie Staking is another very good close friend from, I think, middle school. They've been friends forever. And Allie gets brought into the fold because obviously she gets put on notice about Eric's death. She testifies, she comes in and flies in the next day to go to to obviously comfort Kouri and be there for her and help her through this loss. And they talk about the celebration of life party that occurs the next, day, I believe. Everybody's at the house, including Amy, the sister, Bryce, various people in and out of the home. They are drinking, there is alcohol, those kinds of things. I think there was an allegation that she drank too much and, sort of like a celebratory. Ultimately, Allie testifies to some photograph that they're standing there. It's Kouri, um, Amy, Bryce, and I can't remember another person. No one we've seen yet, but they're all smiling. And this is the day after, so that's Amy, his sister, and Bryce, the best friend, and obviously Kouri. And what Allie says is, yeah, because we were trying to be light for the children, right? So we were trying to be like smile, like not obviously everybody's crying, but we were trying not to be this like down,
Right.
which makes sense. I mean, I've been to a wake, and you've got, it's not
When
you
people
get
come together in that grief, they often will default to right storytelling, talking about the person who passed away. Usually that means talking about good memories, funny things,
right.
as a way to try to bring people together, lighten the mood a little bit, and ultimately remember the person. And I think the best way we always do that, right, is by talking about the good stuff. So I didn't think, and I think Allie testified that there were some questions that there was nothing unusual about people's behavior at this wake or at this celebration of life that is any different than you would see really at any other similar event. It was people coming together, talking about their loved one. Yes, there was some laughing. Yes, there was drinking. People are smiling in photographs, but that doesn't mean they weren't still mourning.
Allie, I think, is still friends with Kouri. I mean, I got the sense that they still keep in touch. Um,
I mean, I think at one point because she is also used to testify that actually the defense gets to direct her because she's an out of town witness. So the defense gets to use her to introduce some evidence, which is how that photo comes in. And they also get into the incident when her and their families went to Hawaii and Eric snuck weed gummies into Corey's bag and Corey was upset about it, but they kind of upset jokingly about it, and it was funny because she didn't know about it, didn't get caught, but it sounded like she was a little bit upset about it, but so she was used to that. I think that the purpose of that, right, is to show that Eric did use drugs at times, although I don't think that there's been any evidence that it's anything other than marijuana gummies.
Before they get on direct, though, the state gets the Sedona note, or Sedona
Oh, yes.
journal entry into evidence. And they had a big argument over this, actually. I think that, the judge had already ruled on it in preliminary motions in limine. The defense raises it again. Defense doesn't want it in. And the judge, I mean, it gets a little, heated.
The prosecution tried to enter it in then after the judge ruled in with redactions, and the defense was like unredact, let the
Yeah,
whole thing.
if you're gonna put it in, just put the whole thing in.
Yeah.
So they put the whole journal entry in, and what it is Allie testifies that they go to Sedona together. They go to sort of a not spiritual, but sort of reflective retreat together. And in that retreat, they journal their life's story, but in third person. So not in, when I was a child, but Kouri was 9 when, and the journal goes into, so they get the entire, I think it's almost 2 pages, maybe 3 pages, they put it into evidence, which I think it was a very good um, answer for the defense to put the entire journal in because again, it was context. It gives some context to why she's talking about at the end when she talks about Eric.
And it humanized her, and yeah, it gives somebody an opportunity to feel some empathy for her if you're trying to get a juror to feel bad for her or feel
Right.
for her.
Right. Well, if you have a juror that has can identify in any way, because I don't know about what they did for voir dire, which is when you ask the questions of the jury, if they ask the jury anything about addiction or any of those kinds of questions, but if you have a juror, and most likely you do have a juror that has been touched by some sort of addiction, they may see this and say, huh, this is interesting. This could explain a lot of behavior. And what I mean by that is because in the entry, she writes her story to say, in essence, she was raised by her mom. Her dad was, paralyzed with addiction, so he had left them. She was raised by mom, and I think brother, her and her brother raised by mom. Mom was a gambling addict. Mom had lost their home, lost every worldly possession basically due to a major gambling addiction. And to me, that struck in the sense of, well, that would make some sense to me because now we have context for Kouri not being afraid of losing millions of dollars.
But really being worried about losing her house.
But being afraid of losing her house because that would trigger, sort of that childhood trauma and saying
Yeah,
to her,
it really put that into perspective. I really do think it did.
yeah, but I don't know for a juror that may not be open to that or, have that type of analysis at all or have any exposure to that. I mean, as attorneys, we deal with addiction quite a bit. We see it all the time. A lot of people that enter the courthouses unfortunately suffer from, major addiction, and gambling is one of them. And it is a very devastating addiction. So this to me could explain the financial wreckage that this woman created. And again, I think that if you look at it through that lens, you could see this isn't enough for murder. But if you are on the other side of it, you may not think anything of it. And that's what jurors get to do. They get to decide the weight of the evidence, if it's important or not, if they're going to take some of it, none of it, all of it, and throw it aside. So
You can easily look at that as perspective about why she's so focused and she's so upset about learning about the house, like the phone call, the safe, everything else that we hear about from this witness, everything is her being so upset about the house, it really does put that into perspective. On the other hand, if you are already kind of riding along with the prosecution on this, you're seeing this as a person who did have these struggles in their life and was really focused and, obsessed with becoming successful. And, will she do anything to not lose her business, including kill her husband in order to get his life insurance policy proceeds to, continue on with her business and not lose everything. So I think you could look at that. That's a fact that, or a piece of evidence that came in that depending on who you're watching this trial through as a juror and who you sort of picked a side on early on, and maybe you're staying open-minded. Hopefully the jurors are staying open-minded, but we know they tend to kind of pick a side early on in the trial. And you could look at that and justify either side of that.
I just wonder if the defense is going to argue any of that. I mean, they obviously, they didn't cross-exam. They just kind of let it sit there. I mean, they did ask, they got her on direct and talked to her about, some other issues, but, they didn't really go there, with her. But to me, I'm wondering, would it have been worth getting some, and maybe they're going to have some sort of expert with respect to gambling and just sort of this, theory of whatever, right? Because really, if you not that I that would a juror think, okay, if you take it to the next level, flipping houses, or is that some sort of rush to make a quick dollar? I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of
Is
people
it
that,
a, is it a, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, when
and
you look at those bank records, right, she's riding thin lines, very thin razor margins, and is that the adrenaline rush of not losing a property, taking out debt, paying it off, or getting the same dopamine hit from doing something like that and living life on the edge and
well, that's
constantly on the brink?
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. I mean, you have the forensic accountant, and the forensic accountant shows what she's profited, right? She went from like 60,000 to like I think some major number, 600,000 or something, and then it goes down. I mean, and so then, obviously the assets are going up, and then she clearly takes that $250,000 loan right from under Eric's nose, doesn't, we know she takes that without him knowing. And so to me, a lot of this behavior could be explained um, outside of a murder, of a murder sort of motive. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see if a juror picks up on that because they get to deliberate that, right? If they're hearing that, there could be someone like, no way. The other piece that's interesting about that sort of journal narrative is at the end, she talks about her marriage, that she gets married, she has a baby, they have another baby, she thinks it's going to save the marriage, they have another baby to save the marriage, and then ultimately she's not happy. And obviously, I think that's really what the prosecution wanted to get in was to show that she wasn't happy. And again, her own words to say she's not happy, therefore she wanted him to die.
Think she said something like she's been chasing happiness, right? And
Hmm.
so I think they're going to probably tie that in some way, right? In closing, that her chasing happiness was chasing success and not losing her business and making money, and that she would, ultimately, I think their theory is that she killed him for it.
Yeah.
I think that's what they have to prove. But that was the day 9. Do you want to talk about? I think we have a little preview of what might be left to come ahead because on Thursday, early on in the testimony, there was a break where they were talking about basically like where the prosecution's going, and I was really shocked when the prosecution said they anticipate finishing up on Monday. And I was thinking about, who do we have left? So he was saying that this detective is going to testify. So we know that there's some kind of law enforcement still left. We haven't heard from Cody. We haven't heard from Bryce. So I don't know what else is out there. I think what's left is still probably, well, I also think they haven't put in, from what I understand, there's a lot more interviews with Kouri, statements of Kouri, other recorded interviews that she's done. I imagine at some point in time they're going to put those in too. So really seems like there's a lot to come from the prosecution in one day. So I'm curious to see if they'll be able to finish that on Monday.
Well, I think that I heard more jail calls possibly. That was something. And if I'm correct, because unless we really missed it, Kelly, but I think there's this walk the dog letter that's going to be.
I've heard about the letter. I have
Yeah,
intentionally not read the letter.
I haven't either. I haven't
I'm
either.
trying to not let the outside influences taint, what I'm watching because I didn't follow this trial beforehand. But yes, I know of that letter. I haven't read it. I'm curious. From what I understand, there was a lot of pretrial motions in limine about this letter. I don't even, quite frankly, I really don't even know if it's coming in or if the judge was letting it in. But if so, I'm guessing we're going to hear about it or see it on Monday.
I think that's probably the law enforcement officer, right? It's probably the sheriff's office through the jail because the letter is confiscated ultimately, I think, at jail. It's never sent, but that's really all I know, other than it's called the walk the dog letter. So I will be interesting to see what she writes. They're going to use her own words, obviously, against her. And this is a heavy motive case, heavy motive.
Heavy
Because
motive. I think
y-
they're there, though. I think they've proven the motive.
yeah, I mean, I think, motives, if you believe that she would kill over finances and the affair, then yeah. I mean, obviously, I think that's been
What
that
I'm, what
that I
I'm
don't doubt.
Where I'm still lacking a little bit is I don't feel, I know that they've proven that or had enough probably evidence to get a jury to believe that she bought drugs. I think they've proven that Eric died of drug intoxication from fentanyl. But they still have not, in my opinion, really outlined how he actually ingested, in what form, and how he ingested this and then ultimately died from it. Like, I don't think that the mechanics of how this happened has been introduced. And I feel like they're asking the jury to make the leap from she bought drugs, he died, she had a reason to kill him without proving the piece about how she actually did it. And so that's where I think the defense is going to have to really hammer home about.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what kind of case the defense is going to put on. I mean, I'm pretty confident that we're going to hear from Chelsea Barney again, because Chelsea Barney, the defense declined to cross-examine her and left and reserved to recall her on direct. The judge would not let them do with her what the judge allowed them to do with Allie Staking, which was direct her because she's a local witness. So I think we're going to hear more from Chelsea Barney, more to come there. But not sure what else the defense is going to put on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the cause of death they know was fentanyl. So that's not disputed. Everybody can agree. The jury is going to be
Yeah.
able to hear that. But it's the manner of death. Manner of death is really the question. If it's homicide, accident,
Accidental
suicide.
overdose. Yeah.
And I don't know if without a more clear and concise manner of death, that if they'll be able to convict. Because if you have a question of, okay, we have all this motive evidence and we have that he's died of fentanyl. Now we do have her, buying drug through the housekeeper, Carmen, but we don't even, if, not even 100% sure it was fentanyl. So
Right. That
again,
seems debatable.
that seems shaky. The question is what is the jury going to be able to take the leap? Is the jury going to be able to? I know people want to agree, that in the, sort of on the court of public opinion, it's easy to say she's guilty. But when you have 12 jurors in the box and they've taken an oath and they're looking at this evidence and then they're going to be reading and also read to probably about 100 pages of jury instructions, and they're going to have to determine whether or not there's enough there for them to make that leap to say that, yeah, the manner of death was absolutely a homicide here. And that, I mean, but you're asking to say that in that moment, maybe he took it himself, maybe it was accidental, maybe, we just don't have any forensic evidence of any kind. We don't have the glass tested. We don't have any kind of fentanyl laying around. I don't even know if there's extra pills. Like, there's nothing. Like, they literally don't have any
And
evidence of
the
that
one
not being in the home.
Yeah, and the one piece I think if I was a juror that I would be questioning, right, and asking my fellow jurors about is, right, I think there's a lot of evidence, right, that she's manipulative. She manipulates her own friends. She takes from her own, she has no qualms about doing that. But when it comes out that Eric dies of a fentanyl overdose, she is so adamant and doesn't take any opportunity to kind of sprinkle in that the possibility that he accidentally ingested this by saying something about him using pills, using drugs, dabbling in anything. Like she really doubled down on this. Eric didn't use drugs. And I can't help but wonder, like, if I'm this mastermind that's organized this entire plot to do this, to save my business, why I'm not then taking the opportunity or then trying to
say it's a drug addict.
and that he's a drug
Yeah,
addict and
right.
not double down the opposite. And that's the one piece that I'm having trouble. If I were a juror, that I'd have trouble really being able to answer. Like, why didn't she? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the phone calls that's recorded. She's like, I don't even understand. Like, how's he dying of a fentanyl over, like, or was it the text messaging? It might have been the
Oh, I think
text.
you're thinking of the call to the Emmy where she's asking about, the dose. What is that? Is that even a lot? Like, how much
Yeah.
is that? I
Like,
don't
what
even.
is that? I don't even understand. Yeah. But then I think it's the text messaging too with Chelsea though. And she's like, yeah, he died of the overdose. Like, I don't even know how he would have.
Crazy. How did they make Eric doesn't do drugs? This is crazy that they could even think that he would die of a fentanyl overdose. Like it genuinely, and I guess we listen to other things where she genuinely is making someone believe that she's a successful business person,
I
right?
know.
Genuinely making Chelsea believe that there's no way Eric, took these drugs. So maybe she's just Oscar worthy actress as well, and really able to convince all these people of these things that aren't true.
At the end of the day, though, they're going to have to show that they have shown the fentanyl was a lethal level, that it was not a therapeutic dose, that if he took it, it wasn't, that it was not accidental, right? Not an accidental ingestion. The thing that I don't know is, and I'm not sure if they testified to what that dose was in pill format. So how many pills would have had to have been taken to be lethal. What I know about fentanyl is that it's not a lot. You don't have to take a lot to die from it, which is why it's so dangerous. And so, the thing about the what I would have, in my mind, again, I'm sort of saying, okay, so if he took it accidentally, would that have been just one pill?
Yeah,
And
I don't know that either.
yeah, so
Take one thinking it was an oxy or something and was going to have that with a drink and they were celebrating that night. You
right.
know, again though, if that were true and he did that, wouldn't Kouri tell people that? Wouldn't she say, even if it was accident, or I guess maybe she could say that he did it in secret and was hiding it from her.
I mean,
Um,
if again, if you believe her, she's with the kids, she's sleeping in the bed with the son, which sounds like that was pretty normal, and then goes back to, sort of the marital bed where her husband was laying, and then she realizes that he's cold at some point. So, I just it's an interesting
but it
dynamic. I
it's
don't I don't
leaves
know
you with
how.
questions, and I feel like there's questions that the prosecution hasn't answered for me.
Yeah. Well, what I think the prosecution has done is laid down a really good case with the facts that they have, right? I mean, they have really done as good a job as they possibly could with what they have. And the question is it enough, right? I mean, I have no doubt that they believe this is what happened. The question is, in the court of law, is it enough to prove it? And
I think if I mean, ultimately, hindsight, when we know what the outcome will be one way or the other, you can always second guess any decision that was made. But I do think that there's a possibility that this whole February 14th and the attempted murder thing and bringing in this breakfast sandwich guy, bringing in Jason Casey to talk about that phone call after, it is possible to overtry a case. And it seems, I guess there's a possibility that it could backfire, right? And you could view this as all just sort of piling on and using it to make Kouri just look bad in any light that you could. And, maybe that ultimately could have been a bad, a decision that they may rethink about whether or not it was overkill to try to prove this breakfast or, this whole breakfast sandwich poisoning thing on Valentine's Day. I don't know. It kind of strikes me as a little bit of overkill and adds just a somewhat complicated case, right? And all the financial motives a little bit complicated. Like, I don't know, could have stripped it down just a little bit, taken that piece out, might have simplified it for the jury instead of trying to prove what, even if they succeed on that, I think is a weak case for attempted murder in the first place. So might have just been smarter to focus that in. But, if they get guilties on it all, then, we eat those words.
yeah, I mean, again, her voice in those phone calls sounded so credible in my mind, and again, when you're, you know, if she is like her mom, right? She's outlined that her mom's a gambling addict and da da da. So if she's a gambling addict, in her mind, she might think she is a winner, right? She might actually think all of that is true and really that she was coming through with that. And at the same time, even though it's not true that she was financially successful in that moment, that she is not the murderer, right? Because I thought it sounded very authentic to, her reactions to Bryce, her emotions. I felt like, again, it appeared to be it did not, I mean, again, when if you think she's a liar, but it did not appear to me that she was lying. I don't know. To me, it seemed credible. It just
Lying or she's really actually convinced herself that this is successful. But that's what I said, like, at the same time, we know she's got a master's degree. She's college, like she's a smart woman. She even says it herself in her own words. I'm not dumb. I'm a smart woman. So does she really think that she's as successful as she is? And just by owning these properties, that makes her wealthy and successful. And it just seems like a stretch given how otherwise educated we know she is.
right. But again, like you said, I mean, if she's then saying to the medical examiner, I don't even understand. He doesn't even use drugs. Like, how would this
Right.
have happened? Like, that's not like consciousness of guilt statements. I mean, those are like real statements. Like, I don't understand how my husband died from a drug overdose. He doesn't use drugs. Like, and that's a legitimate, I mean, would you, if you had just murdered him with poisoning, is that what
I
you'd be saying? I don't
wouldn't be
even know if
calling
I'd
the
be calling
need
the
and
med
asking
examiner.
questions.
You'd be like hands off. You're like, I don't even want to call anyone. Just tell me, and let me know when you guys decide. I mean, she's active in the investigation. She's actively trying to figure out what's going on. And it's contrary to what a lot of, I think, what you would think would be the consciousness of guilt type behavior. Um, so I don't know. It's really it's interesting. Although, like I said, I think the prosecution with what they have really laid out, and I get it. I understand now why, with all of this information, of which some of I think was dug out by the sister, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
let it not be lost that these sisters do not like Kouri, and they helped build this case against her.
And
I
you can
think
either view that as a juror, as somebody, if you're looking at this and maybe you're siding with Corey and believing things that Corey and the defense, are putting down, that you're thinking these sisters are meddling, they're out to get Corey, they're just trying to, they want to control the house, they want to control the kids, and this is all their vendetta against Corey. At the same time, if you're kind of riding along with the prosecution and believing, what their witnesses are saying, you could also see these as two sisters who are out for justice for their brother. So again, I think it comes down to, what lens are you viewing all of this evidence through? How is it being filtered? Because, in terms of where you're viewing things, because I think you could easily look at that. I did get the sense, and I have been getting more and more the sense that, man, these sisters really were out to some degree to get Corey. I mean, when we hear through Allie staking that they show up, the sister, I think it was Amy, shows up at the house because she sees the locksmith there because Corey's trying to open
the
the
safe.
safe. And immediately, like, we're 48 hours after her husband's died, and she's like, you don't, like, I shouldn't insinuate, what she said, but the basis of what we get is that Corey's told that the house isn't hers, that it's in the trust, and that
Right.
she has no, that she can't open the safe. And she comes into this house to tell her she can't open this safe. If I'm, Corey, and I'm innocent and I didn't kill my husband, I'm going to be pretty pissed that somebody who is not my, family, I guess it's her husband's family, but is not me or my kids, coming in and telling me what's going to happen to my house and that I have no say and can't open a safe in my husband's safe. Like, I could see how that would make somebody really pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah, that reaction I don't think is abnormal. I just don't see it as abnormal,
And
it's
actually, I think Allie says the same thing in her testimony. I think that it came out like, given what was happening, do you think her demeanor was appropriate? And she said yes. She said that given what was happening, that her reaction was, I don't remember the exact word she used, but it was along the lines of, yeah, it was completely normal and appropriate given what was happening.
yeah. I mean, also too, the Becky Lloyd comment about he would be better off, it would be better off if he was just dead. I mean, I think that you could probably take a poll of, you know, 90% of people who have gone through a divorce or have divorced have probably had a thought of that similar nature. I mean, I don't want to, insert, but I think that, people, when they're emotional and they're dealing with their kids and their family and their futures, these, emotions run high and people think some, crazy feelings.
Yeah, it's
Also
actually what
doesn't mean that
Becky.
we're acting on
Yeah,
them.
it's
So,
actually exactly the way Becky phrased it when she gets the opportunity on redirect. They're
yeah,
like, why do you remember this when, there's this evidence that comes in that she had told someone she couldn't be sure. And she's like, well, it struck me and I remembered it because to me, it was, that's something you think. It seemed like an inside thought. And
yeah,
so it's sort of that idea that maybe you should keep that in your thought bubble inside
yeah,
and not say it out loud. And that's why
right.
she remembered it. So I thought that defense scored a little point there. And then I think ultimately kind of backfired by her getting to re-explain that.
Yeah. The the case is definitely developed. I wonder what the defense is going to do. If they're going to just let it sit and rest where it's at. I mean, I guess it depends on what's going to happen with this
I think
letter.
they're putting on the case. I think they're going to put on the case.
Yeah.
I think they're going to recall Chelsea.
Well, I know they reserved her. They said she's still under the subpoena. The hardest part on weekend breaks, and I guess his court maybe is closed on Fridays or obviously attends to different, additional business. Um, so it's a long break for a jury to, 3 days and then come back. Um, and a lot to think about. It's a very isolating job being a juror. It's almost impossible to go online and not see, like the judges, like be affirmative about staying away from the headlines. Well, if you go into YouTube at all, or if you go into Instagram at all, it's highly likely, especially in the local neighborhood, it's going to be popping up in the news. And so these jurors are really living a very, they're going to have very limited interactions, even with their spouses or loved ones and kids. And, that makes it really hard. But of course, we don't know the background of the jury, but that can really, make or break some of these decisions that we're talking about. I do want to say that I thought the judge did a really nice job with all these evidentiary issues. I mean, all this evidence coming in and out, it's been really refreshing actually to watch. And sort of, him making the decisions, how he makes those decisions pretty quickly and thoughtfully. And I don't know if there's one decision he's made that I haven't agreed with. I mean, that I've said, oh, I think that was a bad call.
I feel like I, it's, I haven't really necessarily, I wouldn't say I've disagreed with any decisions that he's made. I do think he is, in my opinion, a little bit lenient on letting hearsay in for effect on the listener. We've heard a lot of that. I think that there are some judges that might have kept a little bit of that evidence out, but he seems pretty liberal on that. I just hope if he's going to do that, that he's equally as liberal with letting that in when the defense puts on their case too. If he does, then I don't have a problem with it. But yeah, I think he's been really fair. His demeanor is so calm. He's calm, cool, and collected. And even when he's firmly ruling against you, he's doing it incredibly respectfully. And even when you can tell it would be an opportunity where he could really be snippy or make a snide comment, he really keeps his cool and rules firmly.
Yeah, I love it.
Very respectfully.
We already have his tell. Is there anything else? Well, yes, Judge. And then they go on. Is there anything else? It's like da da da. No? Okay, denied. Yeah, thank you. Let's keep going. Like, he lets them build that record so that they can appeal. But and I do
But
think
he's letting them try the case too. He's letting a lot in. He's letting them really try the case. He's letting, I think he wants the truth out to the jury in an appropriate and constitutional way that also looks out for Kouri's rights too, because I don't think he wants this reversed on appeal. Which probably is why he's let a little bit more in than I might have.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the defense, when they make the objections, they actually start to argue from their tables about what their objection is. And you got to be very careful about that because you don't want to tip the jury off as to why you don't want them to hear it because they'll get upset by that, right? They'll be like, let me just hear it. I'd rather just hear it anyway and just give it to me. But the
Right.
judge
Which
is
is
doing, oh,
well, I was gonna say, which is why, right, when the defense wants the unredacted letter in, and I believe the jury is still in for this when they go to sidebar, right? If you're the prosecution, do you want to then fight that, or do you want the whole thing in? Because now the jury, right, if they see that the prosecution is fighting to redact something, I'm sitting there thinking, what do you not want me to see?
right.
Like, if you don't want me to see it, it probably helps her, and so I want to know what that is. And so you got to be careful when you're on either side about objecting or redacting things, because inherently it's going to be looked at as you're trying to keep something from the jury. And sometimes, right, as especially on the defense, that's your job. Sometimes your sole job is to protect your client from the jury hearing certain information.
I
You
do.
got to try to do it in a way that the jury doesn't know that.
Yeah, well, they are. I mean, they're definitely putting argument from the bench and, I mean, excuse me, from the desks. And the judge has had to call them up quite a bit to sidebar in order to sort of have these arguments on the side. But I think that the defense has done a really good job in preserving her rights if there's a conviction. I mean, they really have laid out the objections. She continues to keep laying out these 404B objections, basically saying, well, all the above, all these text messages, everything, is really bad character evidence, and it goes beyond what they need to show here in the sense of her financial, crimes, or bad acts, right? Prior bad acts. So they're not crime. Well, maybe they are
Some of it was
crimes.
criminal.
Yeah, maybe they are crimes. But
I
either
think there were
way,
some crimes in there.
yeah, either way, they are preserving her rights, and it's hard, we have to remember that they have their job to do. And I think the attorneys are also doing a really good job of keeping their cool by losing most of their emotions. Literally, like, I mean,
They've
that's,
lost almost everything.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an uphill battle being a defense attorney. You're not winning like 95% of these motions, right? And we know that going in. But the key and what they've done really well, which some attorneys don't do as well, is managing their expectation and emotion and making sure that that record is clear in case of the conviction. And they have to do that. So they've done a really nice job of that. But yeah. So that was day 9. I think we had, 6 witnesses, some phone calls, lots of text messages, and it really is the friends turning on Kouri Richins. That had to have been a really hard day for her, especially where her best friend currently is Allie staking, and she was, brought in on the prosecution to testify against her. And that, I felt actually really bad for Allie because that's a hard thing. And she must believe Kouri didn't do this. And to be put on the stand to, obviously testify against her friend was probably incredibly difficult. But I think,
I think it's a hard thing to do, whether or not you're like Allie and you're still maybe friendly and in her life, or you're like Chelsea and you're probably want nothing to do with her. I think either way, it's a very hard thing to do.
Chelsea was a very likable witness. I felt my heart went out for her. I think it's devastating that her life was
Very credible.
turned upside down like that. So it's unfortunate. But I'm not sure if that means that's murder, and it really comes down to this is all a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, was it a fentanyl? Was there an intentional fentanyl poisoning? So
Well, we'll see next week when the prosecution wraps up their case, and then it's the defense's turn to put on their case. We'll see how much or how little. They don't have to do anything, right? They have no burden. They don't have to put on a single witness. But I think they're going to, but we'll see. And the prosecution will finish their case next week for either Monday or maybe Tuesday.
yep. So now it's the time where we get to ask if you liked our video and if you liked our analysis, if you would like our video, subscribe to our new channel. We are learning. We appreciate the fact that we might be jumpy. We're trying to figure out our flow, our screens, but we love what we do, and we hope that's coming through. So if you enjoyed any of this, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Thank you guys.